Welcome to What is Going On for new thought from the edge of Om. Each week on Om Time's flagship radio show, veteran broadcaster, author, and media consultant Sandie Sedgbeer conducts thought-provoking interviews with inspirational authors, artists, musicians, scientists, speakers, and filmmakers who are working at the point where spirituality and science meet consciousness at the very edge of Om. Here is your host, Sandie Sedgbeer.
Hello. 4,000 years ago, women were seen as living representatives of the Great Mother, whose cyclical and potent energy gave birth to all existence. Today, this sacred awareness has been lost or distorted, causing a collective amnesia among women around the world. However, according to this week's guest, there is one symbol of the Great Mother's loving presence that has remained unchanged for tens of thousands of years, and that's our physical body. Christine Page, MD, has been a pioneer in the field of holistic healthcare for over 4 decades. Known as a mystical physician, her own highly attuned intuitive gifts allow her to not only psychically interact with clients, but also with light beings across the dimensions, including those within the nature world. The author of 9 books, including Frontiers of Health, The Heart of the Great Mother, and The Healing Power of the Sacred Woman, Dr. Christine Page joins me now to explain the many ways this amnesia has affected us, including how female illnesses represent a disconnection from our true identity as women, why sex is a natural process of unification where women take the lead, similar to the ancient sacred priestesses, and how to enhance our well-being by reconnecting to sacred womanhood, and much more. Dr. Christine Page, welcome.
Thank you so much, Sandie. It's wonderful to be with you and your audience.
So, Christine, you're an intuitive from birth. You were raised among healers and psychics. You became a medical doctor in 1978. You specialized in pediatrics, obstetrics, and gynecology. You created one of the first integrative health centers within the British NHS, and you founded a holistic private practice, which included homeopathy, iridology, energy medicine, and counseling. That was pretty advanced thinking back in the 70s and 80s. I remember because I was there. So was it an intentional game plan, or had you always seen healing as soul-centered?
Well, that's a great question. I always have to start with saying I was brought up, first of all, with a very strong matriarchal society. My mother was Scottish, and I had Scottish ancestors. And I always was around these intuitive women that were known as fae, which means wise. And she would tell stories of how she would be in the kitchen, and all the leaders in her community would come and speak to her mother and ask advice. And I think that idea of these wise women and this very strong love of women by men was very important to me, because I never saw any abuse of women in my childhood, appreciating that that isn't true of many women, unfortunately, in the world today. But it meant that I came from this strong background where I was also amongst healers and mediums and homeopaths as a child, and thought this was just normal. So I think that it wasn't so much a game plan as I went forward. It was clearly a soul game plan to say, okay, this is what we're going to do. And I think because I didn't see the abuse that is, as I say, out there in the world, I was allowed to experience the love of being feminine, the love of my physical body, and also to see where that went out of balance with so many women, including myself, I will say, but, share ourselves with other people.
Yeah. I think you've frozen up there, Christine. I don't know whether we've still got you, but hopefully you'll come back in a minute and I'll ask my question anyway. My question, in case you can hear this and only have sound, is the fact that you went into Western medicine. I'm curious about that. Did you do that? Hello, have we lost
Hello,
Christine? You're
I'm
back
here.
again.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know what happened, but you froze then again and we lost you. So I don't think you heard the question that I asked. Why did you choose to become, to study orthodox medicine? Because if you've had access to all this wisdom, the psychic abilities, the intuitive abilities that you had, you were already pretty well versed in, the body as, the whole person.
And so I always like to say that that was one of those higher self decisions, because in truth, one of my problems of being so psychically aware, and I could see people's energy, I could feel people's energy from the moment I was born, but I also was taking on a lot of their suffering and their challenges. And I didn't know as a child that you were supposed to have some good boundaries. So what happened was that I actually experienced their pain. And the last thing I wanted to do was actually be around people who had more pain or who were suffering. And so initially I was seemed to be very shy. My mother would kind of push me forward and say, stop being so shy. And I would say, well, look, I'm seeing all these subpersonalities. I don't know who I'm talking to. And then in my teenage years, I started just to faint. I thought that was one way away from people's suffering. And of course, the choice to be a doctor was crazy because you couldn't faint in an operating theatre or anything else. But here I was being asked to go ahead and do this job. And only afterwards did I learn, first of all, I learned how to have healthy boundaries. And also being a doctor has opened doors to things that I could never have gone into around the world. I have been offered places, to really meet people because of being a doctor. And also it gave me that prestige of being able to practice other complementary medicines. But I have to say, I love being a doctor. I loved holding a baby. I delivered thousands of babies. I loved working in pediatrics. I loved working in ER, A&E. I mean, I love the idea of being so present at times of people's births and deaths and in their most moments of crisis. So, to me, I would never have got that had I not been a doctor.
Did it come as a huge shock to you? I mean, suddenly you're being exposed to people who've had all kinds of traumas, including, sexual traumas, abuse, etc. I mean, that must have not only been painful for you as a psychic and an empath, but it must have shaken your worldview in a way because you'd grown up with none of that.
Well, obviously from something inside me, past lives, etc., it didn't. And I think, first of all, I also had a lot of deaths in my family. So, people died. I thought people all died around 50 or 60. I was surprised anybody lived longer. So I really get used to deaths. But I think I have been I have witnessed such horrendous traumas and abuses. But I have to say that what I think it allowed me to do is not to judge. So yes, there was a part of me, and I think that came from my mother's side, which would have wanted to go out and, I have to say, kill someone who had hurt someone who was so beautiful. But I actually had to learn to step back and not judge, but deal with the situation as it was and help the individual who was traumatized and sometimes the traumatizer.
Mm. In your preface to The Healing Power of the Sacred Woman, you share that while you were writing this book, you developed breast cancer.
Yes.
And though the diagnosis propelled you into the chaos that you most feared, you couldn't go along with the popular belief that you were being attacked by an outside invader, and you refused to do battle with your body. In fact, you saw that diagnosis as a bit of a love letter from your soul. Tell us a little bit about that timely illustration of how female illnesses represent a disconnection from our true identity as a woman.
So first, I want to say that as a holistic medical, the first question I always ask anybody is, what was going on when you got sick? And I am just amazed that that is not the first message that is given to our medical students or our nursing students or complementary practitioners. What was going on? Because in all the years I've been practicing now as a holistic practitioner, I've had people who have no spiritual knowledge, if one wants to look at it that way, say, I know why I have cancer. I know why I've had a heart attack. And I think, if you know, why are we not listening to you?
Yeah.
And so the reason that I asked that question was to myself was what was going on when I developed breast cancer. And I always say, I developed breast cancer, didn't happen to me. Was I was writing that book, the book that you're talking about. And I came to the chapter on breast cancer and I thought, I don't want to sound as if I'm this doctor who's telling people how to deal with such a sensitive subject. So what happens? Literally a week after I sent the book to the publisher, I developed breast cancer. And it's like, oh, there's a cosmic joke. Because in the time that I did have surgery and radiotherapy, I rewrote that chapter. And I sent it back to the publisher at the end of my radiotherapy, and they then put it at the front of the book. Now, that was one piece of it. The second piece was that when I developed breast cancer, I said to myself, because this is what I said, wow, my soul must really love me because I've developed breast cancer. In other words, it had to get through to me at such a deep level, I wouldn't have listened, as many of us don't, until something like cancer comes along. So I don't see illness as a problem. I see it as a message from the soul, a solution. And so I try in everything I teach, it's not about attacking the illness. It's saying, wow, this is a message. I need to stop and listen to why my soul feels that something needs to change. And what needed to change was that one of the messages everybody talks about with breast cancer is, oh, you need to love yourself more. And that could have been, well, you go and have more massages, you take time out. And I realized, and that was such a learning for me, it wasn't that I didn't love myself. I'd lost the self that needed loving. And that's
nice
cancer.
way to put it. Yeah.
That's cancer.
Yeah.
We are so invested in other people's lives. And because I was so psychic, I knew what you needed. I knew how to meet your needs. In fact, I jumped in before you even knew you needed something. But I didn't believe my needs were important.
Yeah.
And that's what I saw cancer was about.
I think we've lost Christine again. We have lost Christine.
She's
there
back.
You are.
Yes, I'm so sorry. Don't know what is happening here. So I'm so sorry.
It happens. You know what? I've had 6 weeks of technology issues, so I'm no stranger to it. What I wanted to ask you was that the book focuses on organs and tissues that are associated with feminine chakras, and you say that these centers not only align with the unique anatomical features of a woman, but also the chakras you find are more frequently out of harmony due to the chronic disconnection from feminine consciousness, not just in women, but men too. But of course, this book is primarily focusing on women. So what are some of the conditions of female imbalance?
Okay, so I use the chakras because I see them as windows to the soul. And I was brought up with Alice Bailey teachings, and that's really where I came through. She talks a lot about the chakras, and it made sense to me because I wanted to understand how what the energy is behind an illness before someone gets sick. And people say, well, can you diagnose an illness? I say, I'm not interested in that. I could do that medically. I want to tell you what's going on in your body before the body has to express itself as an illness. And that to me makes sense. What's happening inside the body before that. So I use the chakras in that way. But the primary, we talk about 7 primary chakras. There are also 2, which I know we'll get into, one of them, which is the root chakra that we need to talk about, which is beneath our feet. And there's another one, star child, above our heads. But all the chakras involved with feminine energy, But one of the ones that we would say is most involved with it is that sacral chakra, which is where the uterus lives and where we've got that energy going through. The sacral chakra is also linked to the throat chakra. So often we get problems in our throat when we really need to be looking at the problems in our sacral chakra. I'll make it as simple as that. So someone who's got thyroid issues or something in their throat needs to look at their sacral chakra, because that's where the wounding is often carried. So let's just take an example. Let's say fibroids or myomas, as some countries call it. This is a benign growth in the womb. Many women have fibroids, and they disappear once you stop taking estrogen or estrogen in your body, i.e. after menopause. But every time someone comes to me with a fibroid, I will say, who takes care of you? And with that, the person starts to cry. The woman starts to cry because nobody's taking care of her. She's taking care of everybody else. And they're all living in this womb, and they're all expecting her to do the washing and to do everything else. And so in the healing that I do, whether the person needs the fibroid removed or not, we first have to make space. So I say, let's get rid of the in-laws, the outlaws, the children who bring their washing home, the husband who you hate. I mean, it's like clear the decks, because women used to have space. Now they're out there multitasking in a horrendous way. Jobs, children, family. Women haven't actually let go of taking care of people. They just put more of them, the more in their needs. And that's where the fibroids are showing up.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you find that certain specific situations, conditions with the person married to different cancers, like cervical cancer, or, you've already talked about fibroids, but would you expect to see something different going on with someone with cervical cancer?
Exactly. Now, the cervix, so one of the ways I come back to my chakras, and this is what I see as a sort of sacred temple for women. So at the entry point of that sacred temple is the vulva. That connects to the base chakra. And in my meditations, and I know, we'll be mentioning some of my courses, but in the meditation I do about the sacred temple, I say, who is the guardian of your sacred temple? And I call them like the bouncer. Who's at the door of your sacred temple? And in all the women I've worked with, they say there's nobody there. So it's like people are just wandering in and out because nobody's told us that we should actually be seeing our body as a sacred vessel, and that people shouldn't wander in and out. We should make sure that only those that respect our body, respect us, love us, support us, are actually there to share. So as you go in, you have the vagina, which I always say is like the corridor leading into a church. And then you get to the cervix. And the cervix is you need a guardian of your cervix, because this is the sacred door into your inner sanctum, which is the womb. And once again, I find that people have no idea that inner sanctum, which, when I'm working with younger people, I might call the heart rather than the womb. Who is getting into your heart? Who are you allowing to abuse you and use you and disrespect you? And so cervical cancer, cervical cancer is so much associated with not having good boundaries and not being able to say no. And again, cancers overall have a difficulty saying no. People like myself who have had cancer, we'll say, oh yes, and then afterwards we'll go, why am I doing that? We're such pleasers. So that what I learned when I developed breast cancer was to at least not say no, but at least I could say, I'll think about it.
Yeah, that's a good one, isn't it? Yeah, teach yourself, if nothing else, to say that.
Yeah, I mean, just if yes is no is too hard, just say, let me think about it. I'll come back to you, and you absolutely know you're going to say no, but this is giving you a chance.
Yeah, stepping stones. Yeah. Now, you say that women are the foundation of the birth of new levels of consciousness, without which the evolution of humanity will become barren and dry. Yet such birth can only occur when women have the courage to reject the beliefs and images of the feminine imposed upon us over the last 4,000 years and reclaim our true identity. Say a little bit about the background to all of that.
So 4,000 years ago, women, and before that, long into history, what we're understanding from the artwork and other things we're learning, we lived together in communities, men and women, and that women had, the ability to give birth to a child if they wanted to. And again, wow, how far are we away from that? It wasn't, oh, I've got to take some protection. It was, this month I'm going to give birth to a baby. Next month I'm going to give birth to a project. We are so far from our intentionality about our creation that we have to protect ourselves from something that might happen that we don't want. Anyway, that's another story. So what women did is we weren't necessarily married one-to-one person. We could have sex with anybody, and any man could have any sex with anybody. But what happened was that we knew we knew we were the mother of that child, but we didn't know who the father of the child was. And so what happened was that we could say to the men, I'm sorry, I'm going to pass all my money and power and space and everything I own through my child, but you get nothing. And guess what? Every battle against women has been about land and property and title.
Ownership.
It was about 3,500 years ago that men suddenly said, okay, we've got a new plan. No sex before marriage. You belong to me. And everything that you have passes down through me to the children. And that's when women started. And there was really the knowledge that women now belong to a man rather. And
so we have another little freeze. So I'm just going to read a little bit, a quote from Christine's book. She said, when woman was made in the image of the Great Mother, no detail was denied. Ancient peoples showed great reverence for the female figure by crafting the wonderful Venus statuette some 20 to 30,000 years ago. And of course, we've found lots and lots of artifacts that, represent fertility and fecundity, and it's all women. We don't see that many of these artifacts about men. So, that's an interesting point to ponder. But fast forward to today, where we find, I'm just reading, Christine, a little bit about what you said about when woman was made in the image of the Great Mother. And you said that fast forward to today, where we find that too many curves are definitely not in vogue, unless, of course, we're talking about the breasts, which have become a particular object of sexual fascination. One that made me think about today. I mean, you and I have lived through the 60s. We know that, back then it was all androgyny. You had to be skinny like, Twiggy, and you didn't really, curves weren't in. Since then, that's all changed. And right now we have this situation where young girls are following their heroes on Instagram who have, exaggerated lips, exaggerated butts, exaggerated boobs, etc. And it seems like we're kind of going backwards in a way to presenting the essence of femininity as only something that men are going to want and be attracted to.
exactly.
Makes me concerned about the girls of today.
Yeah, exactly. One of the people will say to me, oh, well, haven't we got a lot of women who are in powerful places? And I go, no, they are mini men. Okay. So I want to say is that when I hear a woman, and I'm coming back to my sacral chakra, when I hear a woman speaking from up here and she's just speaking like this, and then there's no intonation and there's no tone, and I go, you've lost your connection to the womb, which is when someone speaks in this way. And I know now she's a real woman. And I think that what we're also doing in the same way as you're talking about is we're losing that connection, that women are being told how to look. And I was amazed when I was actually in the breast cancer unit that there was a magazine sitting there saying how to have the right curves to attract your men. And it was like, oh my God, what are you doing? And the idea that we are seeing the physical body as just the how we want to appear for a man to be attracted towards us, rather than recognizing that everything we are it's his. He has to light us up. And I know we're going to speak about this later, but basically we're not here to attract him. He's here to enough. We're not going to let him into our sacred temple.
Well, isn't it true that many species, especially birds, I mean, it's the male that has, all the color and the plumage, and it's his job to attract the females to him. Well, it's unfortunate that today's show seems to be beset with these little breathing spots that we need to take. While you were gone, I said, isn't it true that, in nature, it's usually the male of the species, the bird, whatever, that has the incredible plumage and, all of the things designed to attract the woman.
Yes, exactly. And that's, people don't understand that. That's why the peacock has all its feathers. It's like saying, pick me, look, I'm not infected. You're absolutely right. And the other part that we haven't quite mentioned on is the Virgin Mother crone, the three faces. And the Virgin is this, the one who's got the inspiration and the kind of one that is often sought. The mother is the one that takes care. Oh yeah, we're all happy with the Virgin and the mother, but hey, who's going to take on board the crone energy? That's what the patriarchy are scared of, because the crone is the one that brings about the true transformation. So without that, honoring that feminine transformative energy, humanity can move any further forward. And that's what you were talking about earlier, it's why we have a Virgin Mother, a Mary, a Mother Mary, but we got rid of Mary Magdalene, who is the crone Mary. So we just say, okay, we don't have that crone energy. And I have to tell you, I've been around a lot of women who are terrified of that word crone, saying, oh, we can't use the word crone. We're going to call it wise. No, it's a destructive Kali Lilith energy that's coming to get you, and it will transform you whether you like it or not.
And it's very wise. And I would imagine, it is no longer so willing to be dictated to, by the patriarchy.
Yes. And that's, it's interesting that today we're doing this talk, because Lilith was right on this new moon. And she is saying we need to stop abusing women, not just in the terrible ways we're seeing it, but also how we abuse ourselves as women. And one of the questions I ask is, what were you taught as a child about being a woman? Yeah. And of course, it's like, women should be submissive. Women should be. We have these awful messages inside us as women about what it means to be this gorgeous, curvaceous, sexy being. And we were told, no, that's, we've got terrible words for it. That's being a whore, it's being a prostitute. It's like, wow, we have to move on from some of this. And when people look at, just to say, when they look at the mythology of the Romans and Greeks, that's too recent. If you're going to tell me about real women, it has to be a mythology that goes back beyond that 3,500 years, because otherwise it is totally patriarchally taught that women are whatever.
I was absolutely fascinated when in your book you talked about how the words have been distorted over the years, when the women were the priestesses, and it was a holy, sacred thing, for them to make love with a man. Yes. And it was a gift as well to the man. And then it gets, tainted. And the word harlot, which came from a French word, which meant something completely different in the beginning. And the word pudendum.
Yes.
I mean, that's amazing that the original word, is it pudere, I think, original Latin word, meant shameful.
Right.
Who creates these words?
I know.
Who hangs all of this on us?
I know. And it's in our belief system. And so it's really important for us to go, wow, where's this coming from? And as I say, you can't even look back. I would say look back 7 generations. We can't look back 7 generations. We have to look back much further. And the answers are in our body. It's like, what is it my body wants to bring forth? And one of the parts of that uterus that I was mentioning is the power transformation. And I just want to say is that women are transformers. And so when we meet someone, especially a man, we say, I love you, now change. So women are constantly taking into their bodies the emotions of their people around them. This is one of their functions, which is to then take that emotion in, take it down to the uterus, shed it during a period. And why they're doing that is saying, now I've cleaned you up, go change. But nobody teaches a woman that that's what she's doing during a period. They say, oh, that's the curse, that's the bad thing. Oh, you still, no, this is my power time. I am so powerful during that time that is what my gift to you is. I will clean you up so you can change. And just to say, if you're postmenopausal, the dark moon time, which we're just in at this time around the new moon, is the time when we also do that cleansing, both for ourselves and our loved ones.
I loved your description when you were talking about, and young girls need to know this,
Yes.
About the whole cycle, especially around, the time of their periods and what is actually going on.
Right.
When they think that they're having all of these mood swings, they're actually clearing.
Yes. And the fact is, nobody's telling them that their womb is this cleanser.
Yes.
And that, so one of the things we have to clear out of our womb, as I say, is our in-laws, our outlaws, all of those, but also who are the people you think should change, and they've wandered into your womb and you're trying to help them to change. They don't want to change. They want to stay as they are. So it's like getting rid of all those people who you are trying to help, or those old emotions that you've cleaned off someone else, because that's what you thought your purpose was. And the last group you have to get rid of is the vampires. And the vampires are the ones who creep in along that corridor I was describing and who make you feel small and abuse you.
Yeah.
And they can be men or women. And I think that we don't always appreciate that when someone says, oh, I love being around your energy, you make me feel so good. They're vampiring us. So, I just say that one of my images, because I'm British, is to lift up a drawbridge over your moat and saying, shut the door. And if you shut the door and they get angry, they've been stealing your energy.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to stop.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a short break now. You're listening to What is Going On. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, and my guest today is mystical physician, author, and pioneer in the field of holistic healthcare, Christine Page, MD. And we're discussing her book, The Healing Power of the Sacred Woman. We'll be back with more after this break.
Times TV.
Hello, I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, host of Times flagship radio show, What is Going On? And as an author, editor and 13 times book judge who's read thousands of books and interviewed hundreds of authors, I'm constantly asked what's really worth reading and what's not. So I created the No BS Spiritual Book Club to help you save time and money by picking the brains of discerning names who've walked this path before you. There's no catch, no fees and no BS, just an ever-growing library of 10 best spiritual book lists from some of your favourite authors and teachers, plus free book excerpts, audios and video interviews with people like Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., David G., Lee Harris, Mark Nepo and more. From well-known classics to hidden gems you've never heard of, it's the only no BS guide to the best spiritual books to enlighten your journey of self-discovery. So why not join the club? Get inspired and save money at the nobsspiritualbookclub.com.
Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
Everything that we do, we can do in a contemplative manner. Through the art of contemplation, you can use the gene keys in a really powerful way. Gene keys is basically the code book of life. In the gene keys, the book is made up of these 3 levels: shadows, gifts, and siddhis. And the journey is through those 3 levels, kind of unpicking of the shadow states, the releasing of the gifts, and then the embodying of this higher consciousness called the siddhi. And the siddhis are very exalted words. And it's not like we kind of suddenly are all these exalted Christ-like beings, but we have flashes and illuminations along the journey. And the more we get stuck into the journey, the more illumination comes to us, because the more we're releasing the light from in these codes inside our DNA. So all those revelations are inside us. So the contemplative way is the inner way.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Welcome back. Dr. Christine Page, let's talk about sex.
Oh, yes.
Now, I'm going to read something you wrote. You said that violations of sacred womanhood go back more than 3,000 years, when sexuality and spirituality became separated, and a woman's naked body, especially her genital organs, came to represent a dirty and evil force that had to be tamed at all costs. That just makes me smile, I'm sorry. The consequences of such a long-standing collective desecration of all things feminine are major factors in today's epidemic of rape and sexual abuse, sexual harassment, perverse pornography, and female genital mutilation, not to mention the exploitation of Mother Earth herself. I want you to talk about that, because we are seeing this backward step where it appears that women are, being erased in some cultures. There's attempts to erase women altogether, keep them covered up, don't show anything at all. Rape is on the increase, violence is on the increase. What do you have to say about that?
It's such a huge subject, as my mind is boggling at all the tremendous abuse that's happening.
Yeah.
We've talked about some of that, which is we have to start educating women and their children and their grandchildren about the beautiful body they have, and that this is not to be shared with someone who does not respect them. And I use that word respect because it's linked to the sacral chakra. What I say is, I don't care if you love me or like me, but you will respect me.
Yeah.
And I think that, consider the lilies of the field. Respect is the basics of everything.
Yeah.
So I always say, you will honor me at, really what's happening. So that respect, I don't think we watch that amongst families where there's no respect between how someone talks to someone else or how someone might touch someone else.
Yeah.
That respect is so deeply lost. And yet I use the same word of, do we respect Mother Earth, as you say? Do we respect the gifts that we're getting, but also the way in which we communicate? We seem, social media has taken us to a place where we communicate with disrespect. We say terrible things to each other and think it's okay to do that. And we need to say, stop, that's not okay. That is not okay to disrespect me. We will not go further. So I'm saying that's a first step there. The way in which the whole body is being looked at is something, as you say, people almost like showing parts of their body on social media that should never be seen by someone else, because they think that this is the only way they're going to get love, is such a degrading message to men and women. And the fact, even the very act of sex, can I just speak about that? Because it is that women, when we are trained to actually be the vessel of transformation, to have people know about the Kundalini, this wonderful energy that kind of rises up, taking ourselves to our crown chakra, to our spiritual evolution. And that was the training of women, was how do I not literally physically carry my partner up there, but how do I bring the essence of my partner up this Kundalini, this serpentine ladder, in order for them to experience their wholeness. And then we give birth to that so that they can experience their life, here on this plane. So a woman was seen as this sacred vessel that men, if I'm going to use men, but men needed in order to experience their spiritual wholeness. I mean, that was it. But that was so degrading to men that they then took it as there's nothing important about women. I can do this without you, and you will do it in my way. And the fact is, as I was saying, is the more a woman is excited sexually, sensually excited, lit up by her partner, the more she has this power to draw them up that ladder to experience their wholeness. So a woman having sex with someone when she is not turned on, or even, if I may say, doing a blowjob that doesn't turn her on at all, or does have nothing for her, in the sense of it's not her body that's being involved with this, it's pointless.
Yeah.
So the only purpose is for women to learn that having sensual feelings and erotic places in their body that can be lit up is really important, and that includes masturbation, that we see in babies in the mother's womb. This ability to enjoy your body because it actually brings energy in and it regenerates your body is a very important feature, which unfortunately has been seen as dirty and shouldn't be done.
Yeah. I was interested in the TV series Game of Thrones. There was a scene where a warrior, a leader of a warrior tribe, was married to, I can't remember her name, but, the woman with the white hair who became one of the, the big stars of the show. And when he had sex with her, it was always him taking her like a dog.
Right.
And one of the elder women said to her, don't let him do that.
Yeah.
You get on top. When she did, he fell in love with her.
There we go.
And then
we're made to make love. We can't make love if our hearts are not connecting.
Exactly. But all the other men thought he had become a weakling, and they ended up killing him. Now, it's interesting. I don't know if this is true or not, but I read, and I think it might have been in Rianne Eisler's The Chalice and the Blade, something about how originally what arranged marriages were all about was they didn't want the men to fall in love with the woman. They didn't want lovers to be married and become partners because that weakened the men. And, it would seem, even if women read your book and take it to heart and do start reclaiming, their power, you've still got to change men's minds and the conditioning that they have also suffered. And I'm not blaming them because, these thousands of years of conditioning that we've had. How do we approach that one?
Well, my husband says the most beautiful thing in the universe is a woman in her power. And when I use that phrase to other men, they go, I agree. My husband says that when women become mini men, they're just competition. They're just men. And when a woman doesn't love herself and see herself in the power, then unfortunately she's going to come up against people who will abuse her. I'm sorry. So it's not that men are waiting for women to step up into their power. Now, I'm going to tell you, there's men who don't want them to do that. But when a woman does, the men are only too willing to literally say, how do I serve you? Because they realize that women have something that they don't have. And I'm getting teared up because, that's what my husband says. I know women have something I don't have and never will have.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this power of birth, of creation, that we take for granted. It's the most amazing experience. And that's why I say that when women lose that, the earth we will no longer survive. because men cannot do this. Men cannot do it, not just because of their lack of estrogen, or it's literally within our framework of our body, our XX, that has made us like this. And this is who we are. We are built in the image of the mother, the great mother, the earth, etc. Now, just returning, if I may, to the idea of sex, there are 3 different levels at least.
Of course, we're going to freeze on a very interesting part, but I'm sure that Christine will be back in a few seconds. So hold your breath. Okay, there you are. We froze. Such an interesting part.
It's an interesting story. So what I was saying is there are 3 levels at least. Sex at the level of the base chakra is just sex. It's lust, it's need, and what we found is that type of sex where you just have almost an addiction to more and more of it is no different in the brain than taking cocaine. So it's a sort of stimulant, an addiction. But when you go to the sacral chakra, you're saying now, I want a relationship with you. And this is where I think people get lost. You know, people say, well, I thought you wanted sex. No, I wanted a relationship. And so there's an imbalance. And that's the relationship in the sacral chakra is called intimacy. And the word means into me you see. So when we have a relationship, we're willing to take our clothes off so you can see who I am. And I think you're talking about the arranged marriages, etc., or having sex as you might do with the dog. You don't want to be in a relationship. You might as well just take cocaine, frankly. Yeah. You know, you might as well, whatever. But when you go to the heart, you're now making love. And what making love means is you are willing to merge with this person and expose your own heart to their experiences. And when we make love, we go to this final place, which I will say at the crown chakra, where we have a unity consciousness with all life. And that's what we're meant to be doing when we're having sex. But I think too often we don't define what type of sex we want. Some people just want it without any complications. But once we go to the relationship level, there is a bonding that we need to accept, that we are now connected.
You know, I feel very sad when I read about, different cultures that want to keep women down and really, just want to just treat them as vessels, to bear their children and nothing more. You mentioned in the book Tom Kenyon and Judy Sion when they wrote about the Magdalene. And there was a piece in there that touched me as well. I'm glad you mentioned it in your book, where they were talking about, Mary Magdalene was trained in the cult of Isis. Yes. And what she was trained for was to be a vessel to support that man to become his greatness. Right. And this is what men are missing out on. The men who do not understand that, the men who don't see it as, a route to unity consciousness, who just want it to stay at the base level, they're missing out on that.
I know. And I want to say, if you read the book, I Remember Union.
Yes.
Yes. The book, I thought that was amazing. And some of the other Mary Magdalene books, that she became an enlightened being, an evolved soul. She did her work in order to be that vessel. So I've got to say is that without her becoming the enlightened being she would be, Yeshua, Jesus, couldn't have done this. So she, this is the way of women. Women have to do their own work. And then, what I see is this sort of, she's standing there and him coming and knocking on the door and can I enter into your sacred temple? And you go, nah, you're not ready yet. Go away. Come back later. And I think that's what we should be saying. You have to honor the feminine before you can even touch her, before you can even communicate with her. You have to show me that you're worthy. And we've lost that. And I would like to see that coming back.
And that's not, not to be taken the wrong way, because in showing the woman that they're worthy, the woman is then able to elevate the man. So he gets a lot more out of it as well.
Exactly. It's like she's calling on him, come on, do your work. I'm doing my work, you do yours. And, that was the difference, as I was saying, is that, women are, I love you now, change. Men buy the package and don't want anybody to change.
Yeah.
So, I think that's also, we sometimes forget that women are saying, I'm bought, I'm with you. I'm trying to offer you this opportunity. You don't have to take it, but I can't stay at the level that you are if you're not going to. Has to be a unified shift. And we all know in relationships, it's always changing.
Yeah. Well, back in 2008, you wrote a book, 2012, and the Galactic Center, The Return of the Great Mother. And you were talking about the expansion of consciousness that was made possible by the 36-year window of opportunity that opened up between the harmonic convergence and last year. And you were predicting that this expanded consciousness, that we would be having experiences like shamans and pharaohs and sages. Have you noticed since then that this is actually happening? And are you confident, do you feel confident that we are moving in the right direction? Because it doesn't look that way when you read the news.
So I did a lot of conferences around 2012, which I was very fortunate to go to, so I could listen to a lot of people. Of course, as Geminis, we love learning. And I heard from all of them, because they looked at 1,000-year histories, it wasn't just the last few years, that 2020 to 2028 would be amazing years. But they always said 2023, 2024 would be the most challenging years. And they said then it's because AI is going to come in. And that once AI came in, no disrespect to AI, but we would then not be able to know, we wouldn't have to take responsibility for what we did. And this new age is not about not taking responsibility. It's about becoming accountable for everything we do. And one of the messages was, it's time for us to feel the effect of our words and actions on others immediately as we act, because only that will change what we do. And this isn't about, I'm an empath, I feel you. No, if I say something to you, I immediately, because I'm connected to you, will feel the effect of my words on you, Sandie, and I will make a choice whether I do that again or not, because of the effect it's having on me. And I think we're in that stage. The lack of accountability and discernment about what we put out into the world is got to change. And they said, I'm sorry to say, 2038 is the year where we're going to get it. So we're still a few years ahead. People keep saying to me, have we finished the transformation? No, we haven't even started. While there is one person being killed in a war, while there is one child being abused, while there is one woman being trafficked, we are so far from what we are here to do as human beings. And just to say, we are not meant to be ascending off this planet and becoming going somewhere else. We are fully embodied, creative human beings, and we can only do.
Well, I do hope that Christine comes back again, because we haven't finished with her.
So sorry, I don't know what's going on.
Somebody doesn't want anyone to hear this.
To hear this, that's right. We've had problems before, Sandie, you and I.
Yeah. I think, one of the things you say is so important. And I think anyone listening to this, women and men, should really take notice, is that when women embody their true female gifts, humanity will be healed. Yes. I think, we've got to take the first step, because then we can help the men, embody their true male gifts.
And that was a Native American saying, that 1,000 years of peace will come when women heal their hearts.
Yeah.
And I think it's also will heal their wombs.
Yes.
And I know women, I hope we've got time to say this, I see men waiting for women to sort themselves out. Who are you wanting to be? Not a mini man. I see too many women taking the role of the masculine, so there's no place for the men in their life.
Yeah.
We have to get
Yes.
back to being women
Yes.
and know what that means. And one of the problems that happened at 3,500 years ago was that instead of us working together as a community, because of the patriarchal shift, it meant that we've developed hierarchical systems or harems.
Yes.
So that what happened, instead of you and I sharing our goods with amongst ourselves and our children and our grandchildren, we then had to compete with another woman to make sure we were the favored woman so that our children could survive. And now that is still happening. The amount of competition amongst women to be the favored one, I cannot believe it's happening. And I would say, if we want to change the world today, if you want to come and sleep with my husband, come and ask me first. And you ask me first, I might say, yes, please, I'm ready.
Yeah.
If every woman stopped this game of saying, oh, his wife's a terrible person, she's too frigid, we want to...
Christine, I'm going to have to stop you right there. I'm afraid we really have to go now. I do want to tell everybody that they should go to your website. They should look at your incredible courses. You've got the Handbook of Women's Mysteries, which is an online course that people can take. You've got other events there that people can join in, a wonderful forum. So please do go and have a look. And Christine Page, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Apologies for the internet, but thank you.
Okay. That happens. So, Healing Power of the Sacred Woman, Health, Creativity and Fertility for the Soul by Christine Page, MD, is published by Barren Company. And for more information about Dr. Page's books, courses, videos on healing into wholeness and earth mysteries and other offerings, visit christinepage.com. That's it for this week. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer. I'll be back at the same time next week with another edition of What is Going On. Till then, it's goodbye from me.
Goodbye.